Omaha's news leader, chronicling the stories and people making a difference in our community. This is KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle.
Good morning and thanks for joining us. I'm Eddie Messel. The conversation around high school athletics is changing around the country and in Nebraska. It's a major discussion with the transferring, lopsided scores, and lack of participation in some districts. This morning, we're having our own open discussion on the ever-changing landscape, plus some of the work being done behind the scenes to try and resolve some of the issues. A major issue plaguing high school sports is the transferring. At its core, the idea of transferring was to allow students to change schools to one that could help them further what they wanted to do academically. It has now shifted to a majority of students transferring for athletics. Now, that could help a young student athlete achieve their dream of playing at the next level, or it could backfire. We've seen a lot of that working out for athletes around the state. They win a championship and move on to the next level, but as coaches and athletic directors have seen, it doesn't always work out that way.
Sometimes the schools that the transfers are showing up at, that creates issues in their building because, hey, I've come through the junior whatever program and played this all these years, and now all of a sudden I get here as a freshman and there's kids coming from all other schools, and I thought I was going to be a big part of this, but maybe not now if people have come in and maybe they're a better athlete than me, and so again, there's pros and cons to every side of the argument.
And here's a look at the current transfer laws in Nebraska. The state does have open enrollment when picking a high school, allowing students to attend class in a different public school district than their residence district. If you choose to transfer a student, you must contact an NSAA member school and request the student's name be placed on the association's May 1st transfer list. The student will be immediately eligible for varsity competition without a 90-day varsity ineligibility period, and can do this one time. If you place your name on the transfer list and change your mind, the student is varsity ineligible for 90 days starting in the fall semester. Now, the NSAA operates, the transfers and open enrollment are all handled by the Nebraska legislature. I sat down with State Senator Terrell McKinney to talk about that and what lawmakers can do to fix any concerns about the process.
I think, for one, more investment into high school athletics, like from just all sport levels. I think there's inequities in how each sport is funded. So I think if we put more resources into each sport, I think that would be helpful for sure. I think that's the number one thing, is the lack of resources across all sports, from girls sports to boys sports. I think the inequities in the sports is a huge issue.
And I know the big elephant in the room when it comes to everyone is the transferring issue. I know there have been talks about extending the sit-out period. Is there any talks of or chances of changing the transfer policies around the state when it comes to athletics?
People have talked about it. I think it's more complicated than people think. You know, it is an issue because, you know, when you're watching the state championship, and then when you can easily point out this kid was here the last year or this kid was there last year, it's kind of like, oh, how's this possible? But it's complicated because on one hand, you like, these kids shouldn't be able to go here or there, but some kids leave because of special circumstances. It's not always because a kid is leaving their previous school just to win a state championship. Some kids leave just to be in a better situation overall for life. So you got to think about that too. I think we have to look at why are they leaving those schools and why aren't those schools properly resourced that's pushing those kids to go to those other schools.
I guess talking a little bit about the resources from a state level, do you feel like there's anything that the state can do, or is that more at like a district level and them having enough to allocate those resources?
I think from a state level, when we think about school funding and those type of things, maybe it's something we look at how are we funding digging deeper into like how are we funding our high schools, but how are we funding each little thing, and maybe we dig deeper into the conversation of how are we funding sports and looking at the inequities in sports, because that's the issue, is the funding mechanism and the lack of like having the right coaches in the right spaces. You got kids that come up from grade school all the way up that's now spread apart, and it's mainly because of resources.
And I guess open enrollment is something interesting to me. Being from Florida, that's kind of a whole new concept, because I grew up in a place where you were zoned for a certain school, and wherever you lived, it was done by address. I guess here, do you ever see a world where open enrollment is no longer a thing, and do you feel like that would maybe help some of the issues at hand?
I think it would help. I think more schools, like for example in OPS, would be winning state championships if we didn't have open enrollment, if I'm being honest, because the kids would be in the district more. I think that's a conversation we need to have. We need to have a conversation about option enrollment as well. So it's those type of things, but I still, it's a tricky conversation, because are we going to put resources into a district like OPS to make sure, like, if you're forcing them to stay in the district, are they going to have the same access to resources like a kid in Millard? That's what we got to have a conversation about.
And I guess we'll talk about this later in our chronicle as well, but do you feel like the state could get involved when it comes to reclassification? I know that's another major thing that we feel like could help the competitive equity of things and possibly change in the way that's done in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation, because it's a new concept. When I was coming up, nobody was really ever reclassifying. But you're not only seeing it in our state. When you look across the country, a lot of the top athletes are reclassifying. Some of them are reclassifying down, and some are reclassifying up. So to me, it just depends on the kid and the situation, because there's some kids starting school early, so they're starting school at 5 years old, and they're not technically with their age group. So once they get to middle school or high school, they're going back down to their age group. So it's not like they're completely getting a competitive advantage, because at the end of the day, if you're not good, you're not good. And it don't matter what you do. If you're not good, it is what it is. But I think, it's something to have a conversation about.
Next on KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle, activity directors around the state have seen the change in high school athletics firsthand. They're working together to come up with solutions and possible changes that we could see implemented fairly soon. Plus, we discussed the Competitive Equity Committee that's been put together to try and tackle the lack of competition that's been seen in some sports around the state.